Okay, well, we're at 3:15. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Macedo, Communications Director with CANDO. CANDO is proud to be one of the organizing partners for BC Links to Learning, this 8th annual version, the first time virtual. Welcome, everyone. Please make sure, just a few housekeeping items. Please make sure that your microphone is set to mute. There will be opportunities for questions. Questions can be posted into the chat function. That way you can log your question without interrupting our presenter. And then we'll make sure that there's time either in the middle of the session or certainly at the end to address all of your questions. We can just read them from the chat, or we can turn on your microphone and have you ask the question, whatever you prefer. But if you can just post your questions there during the middle of the presentation, that would be appreciated. Also, as a reminder, all of our sessions are being recorded. Those recordings will be available through the app, the Whova app, and also through BC Links to Learning site, which is linkstolearning.ca, which you can access through the CANDO website as well. Not only will this recording, you can access this recording, but other sessions that you may have missed or didn't have time over the last couple of days to take in, you then have 6 months to go back and check that out. So, as I said, my name is Paul, and I'm based at the CANDO office in Edmonton on Treaty 6 territory. Right now, I'm not in the office, I'm at home, as many of us are. But I wanted to acknowledge that CANDO is on Treaty 6. And I wanted to introduce to you our presenter for today, Trista Pewapisconias with Cooperatives First. She's going to be presenting on Indigenous agriculture and how the co-op model can support Indigenous agriculture, $49 billion industry annually. So Trista, take it away.
Hi, my name is Trista Pewapisconias. I'm from the Little Pike First Nation in Western Saskatchewan, and I am the Indigenous Relations Lead for Cooperatives First. I would like to acknowledge that I am currently calling in from the Treaty 6 territory in Saskatoon. So the Treaty 6 territory is the territory of the Cree, Lakota, Dakota, and the homeland of the Métis. I want to thank CANDO, Links to Learning, and the Aboriginal Financial Officers for inviting me to speak to the representatives of the nations throughout the province of British Columbia. So Cooperatives First, as an introduction, Cooperatives First is a nonprofit business development organization funded in full by the Cooperative Retail Inclusive through Federated Cooperatives Limited. We are founded in 2015 by FCL and a group of researchers at the University of Saskatchewan. We opened our office in 2016 and have worked on over 100 projects throughout Western Canada. And our mandate is to promote and support business development based on the cooperative business model in rural and Indigenous communities across Western Canada. So in March of 2021, Cooperatives First launched the Your Way Together campaign. So the campaign is to inspire Indigenous communities to consider using the co-op model in many community-based projects. Included in the campaign is the Your Way Together website, a free downloadable guidebook on starting a co-op on a First Nation, workshops, a newsletter, case studies of Indigenous co-ops in a variety of industries. We also interview experts in Indigenous economic development through our podcast. I'd like to share with you our promotional video on the concept of Your Way Together and the work behind the campaign.
I believe there is big opportunity for our First Nations communities. The concept of cooperative models and the principles behind cooperatives, I believe, mirror what our values are within our communities. We could create multiple jobs in multiple communities if we are able to come together and have that conversation about the model itself. Far too often, it's the First Nations leaders in the community or the board of directors. Why can't we have community members being part of that control?
Starting a business on First Nation is much more challenging than off Nation. The Your Way Together guidebook is a collection of information on developing a co-op on a First Nation. It includes information on the co-op model, legislation that applies to businesses on a First Nation, and business development, including financing on a First Nation.
There's a story behind the graphics. The design visually represents First Nations from the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, all the way through to the Plains Cree in Saskatchewan. And I'm really proud that I'm able to pair these all together and create a mosaic that represents essentially a map of Western Canada.
I hope the guidebook starts a conversation within communities to see whether the co-op model is a right fit for them.
I'm an advocate for it, and people need to hear it and actually see it in action. I believe there's big opportunity.
Okay, so in the past 5 years of operation, Cooperative First has had many inquiries on how Indigenous communities and groups can enter into the agriculture industry. Because each community is unique and has diverse resources, land bases, capital, and also different requiring different outcomes or missions. A one-size-fits-all approach would really not work for Indigenous agriculture projects. So some of the observations are agriculture is a $49 billion a year industry. Through one-on-one conversations and external research, including the Farm Credit Canada Agriculture Survey report and other forums held based on the topic of Indigenous agriculture, there are several themes that emerge from the desire of communities to start getting into this industry. The outcomes of the research include the themes that resonate within communities throughout Western Canada. So centering Indigenous knowledge and traditional relationships, the land, capacity building, building respectful partnerships and relationships, and also financing, farming, and equitable economies. So these are the themes that kind of emerged from these different surveys and conversations. So some of the opportunities that communities have been engaged in or looking into becoming engaged in are there's gardening, community gardening, Indigenous food, and food processing. While addressing the desires of the communities, such as food security, increased participation of the members, the community members, the members of the co-op, and make it more of a community entity. Access to equipment, and also increase crop variation and increase the training and education for its members. So Indigenous communities can approach the new agriculture projects with basically any business model, whether or not it is a sole proprietorship, corporation, partnership, or utilizing the cooperative business model. So for those who are unfamiliar with the concept of cooperatives, it is a business model that aligns closely with the structure of a corporation. It is a separate legal entity that members can create that would have a legal liability as a corporate structure. A co-op is a business run by a group of people with similar interests who make decisions together and share in the business's profits. In Western Canada, a co-op is created and run by a group of 3 or more. Saskatchewan requires 6, and it is legally incorporated and can be a for-profit or non-profit organization. And co-ops operate in almost every sector of the economy. Although co-ops are like other businesses, they do have 2 key features that make them different. All of the members or owners have the same amount of decision-making power. So that is the 1 member, 1 vote corporate structure. And co-ops give profits back to their members based on how much the member uses the business, not how much they've invested into it. Distribution of profit after the business has paid for all the things it needs to function, like rent, wages, and inventory, are divided back and given as patronage to the members, and based on how much they actually use the business that year. So where co-ops seem to fit is they're formed when members of the cooperative are working collectively to gain access to a commodity or undertaking that they're trying to achieve. Nations, independent producers, individuals will see an opportunity to work together. And they're formed where big businesses and governments just do not support or meet the need, or do not see value in servicing one area, and where people working together can benefit the people individually and community-wide. So kind of the access points for the members can be found through new markets, where individual farms could use the co-op to gather products and sell them under one brand. For procurement, to procure large quantities of items together to bring down the costs of whether seeds, fuel, or support services, or farm support, which would include equipment purchasing, transportation, or specialized marketing. So cooperatives are structured to have membership share responsibility with the 1 member, 1 vote. Benefits also include shared benefits with multiple groups. They're quite versatile in the way the structures can be used and how profits can be distributed. Members, like I said, the patronage is divided by how much people actually use the co-op, and not just the capital. Cooperatives also can be structured to have more community involvement. So members within the community could see the benefits of the co-op, and it would be very transparent on how much members are receiving and how the profits are being used. Education and training has been a high priority for leadership, both in cooperative communities and Indigenous communities. So the examples discussed in this presentation, there are some cooperatives that actively put education for members, youth, and community programs into the operation of the co-op, not only to teach about the co-op, but also to incorporate traditional knowledge into the programming and the sharing of education. So while the examples of Indigenous agriculture co-ops are quite limited. In the next section, I'll provide an overview of many agricultural co-ops in Canada. Although there are a limited number of examples of the Indigenous cooperatives that can be drawn on, we heard of anecdotal evidence of non-incorporated Indigenous co-ops, or ones that are not actually incorporated as a co-op and under a different business structure. Although they're not incorporated as a co-op, they do operate as a co-op. And there are some examples of ones that have been removed from provincial registrars. So the examples I'll show you are just the agriculture co-ops in general. So the most common cooperative uses in agriculture are supply co-ops, producer or marketing co-ops, worker cooperatives, and multi-stakeholder. So supply co-ops are when members pool their resources to gain access to either equipment, bulk purchasing, or labor services. So a farm or nation may be too small to justify the purchase of expensive farm machinery, which may be used irregularly, say just during harvest. Instead, individuals may come together to form a machinery pool that purchases the necessary equipment for all the members to use. As for bulk purchasing, individual farms just may want to work together on certain times of the year and pool their money to bulk purchase seeds, feed, or fertilizer. An example, however, this is not an agriculture, but it is a co-op, is there's an arts co-op in Saskatchewan whose members would purchase beads, thread, fabric, and leather for their own personal use and sales. And then distributed to the members. Sales would be made throughout the year, would go directly to the artisans. But each member would put a small percentage into a shared account to pool throughout the year. And that way that could be used to do the bulk purchasing when all the members need more supplies. So this example is called Glorious Organics. It's a cooperatively owned and operated farming collective situated in the Fraser Common Farm in Aldergrove, BC. So it's a certified organic farm that produces mixed vegetables and fruits for sale to restaurants, farmers markets, food hubs. And then they also have vegetable seeds for sale through the BC Eco Seed Co-op. Glorious Organics is one of the first certified organic farms in the Fraser Valley and has been in operation since 1986. So their mandate is to grow organic, high quality food and to support the organic agriculture. And the Glorious Organics have 5 shareholders, and they are workers, and they share the plot of land on the 6.6 acres commonly held for this their co-op. So the Glorious Organics is a workers co-op, and a worker co-op is owned and operated by the employees. The model has been used in situations where either business owners retire and workers want to buy the business and run it themselves. Not every employee has to be an owner. The business can still hire non-member staff or contract workers. Worker co-ops are actually in all industries and is usually an alternative to either a partnership business model or sole proprietorship. popular sectors include consulting agencies, breweries, small retail, and manufacturing. So, as I said, Glorious Organics is an example of a workers' co-op. The next example I will discuss is Agrippa. So Agrippa is owned by 2,974 dairy farmers that joined forces to process and market milk on their farms. So Agrippa uses the milk and then creates a value add of cheese, creams, and any milk based products through different brands. So every year they return the patronage based on their annual milk production and the surpluses that the co-ops have generated through the sales of the value-added products. Agrippa also structured their youth and their future farmers into develop industry knowledge through different initiatives. So there's a young cooperative leaders program that the youth can visit the dairy processing plants and integrate the young people into the cooperative associational life, and a young facilitators network that will help train the future farmers to take over the family farm and how the co-op can work with them on those types of initiatives. They also have a new program that helps the youth become actively involved in the cooperative governance. So that way the cooperative can continue operating as members retire from the governance structure. So the next example I'll discuss is the River Select. So I know coming from BC, many of you are familiar with the River Select fisheries. So this is 8 First Nation owned fisheries and where members are concerned with like the salmon conservation, sustainable fishing, and making a living. And there's a centralized processing and distribution of the salmon. The co-op itself is responsible for individual branding and sales. And it is a co-op that has a formal arrangement with leadership on meeting the needs of individual communities and fisheries. So River Select sets standards for quality management to promote the product. And it also it has monitoring and a traceability system so consumers can see where their fish is actually coming from. So at the starting point of harvest and to protect the quality of the salmon. And it is also an education tool for consumers to appreciate local source and fair trade fish products with a high quality standard of excellence and how the harvest protects the diversity and uniqueness of each river salmon and its fisheries. So the 2 examples that I have gone over in the previous slides are producer co-ops. So producer cooperatives are generally independent businesses that produce a common product who partner to benefit from increased capacity through the purchasing, administration, marketing, distributing, and managing logistics through a central entity. Sometimes the cooperatives are simply just for marketing administration, and sometimes they're generally nonprofit, as the profits will go directly back to the producers. The benefit of this model is to increase revenues for the members through creating greater market share or access to better markets for independent businesses or individuals that make up the membership. Farmers markets are a big example of a producer or marketing cooperative. So the majority of farmers markets in Western Canada are actually cooperatives, and that's how they're set up throughout the prairies and out in British Columbia. So in the next section, I'll discuss two different models and alternatives that have been identified, but both groups had the same issues. And although these are real life examples, they're still in progress, so I'm not going to actually name the groups. So the issue was, so there's a lack of local slaughter, cut and wrap meat facilities in the region. So local facilities were either too expensive or too busy to take on new products. Producers either paid high shipping costs across the province or unable to process traditional meats for their own consumption. So like I said, there's two different groups and they're looking at this model. And so one was a cattle producer owned abattoir. The cattle producers would be owned, the co-op would be owned by the cattle producers. The producers would supply the raw product and would purchase the facility, hire staff to take care of the processing, sales, administration, and the operations of the abattoir. So this structure would be very similar to the Agrippa model. And the second group was a nation-to-nation owned abattoir. In this situation, one First Nation had used education and training dollars and purchased a butcher program to come to the nation and teach the youth and young adults in the community to become trained butchers and to produce and sell meat to the community at reasonable prices. The meat shop actually became quite successful and was looking at a second location to sell like beef, pork, and chicken products to neighboring First Nations. One of their neighboring nations had many cattle farmers who were looking to supply the butcher shop, as currently the butcher shop was getting their meat from the local Hutterite colony. And there was a third nation that actually had an urban reserve land in the nearby city, and they were planning on building a strip mall. So the leadership of the nations were going to sit together and decide the scenario that would work best for them and their communities to benefit, and to see if the co-op would meet all of their needs. So I will just I'll go over what a multi-stakeholder co-op is. And the multi-stakeholder co-ops are formed when there are different interest groups that would benefit in the co-op. However, not all provinces allow for multi-stakeholder cooperatives. British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba all do have provisions in the legislation, but Saskatchewan does not. So the governance of these co-ops are a little bit trickier because they have different groups that have different or sometimes conflicting views or interests. whereas producers are trying to make the most profit and consumers are trying to pay as least amount as possible. So in the previous, there was the different structures and the same class of group of either producers or owners that would create an abattoir. However, a multi-stakeholder would come into effect if they allowed consumer members. And consumers could be included to process personal meat, so traditional hunted meat to cut and wrap and process, especially when hunting wild meat. Consumers can use the abattoir to have their personal supply of meat processed for their own consumption or for traditional community ceremonies, feasts, or possibly distribution to elders. So if there were the two different classes of members, then that would fit within the multi-stakeholder. So speaking on food security, community gardens, greenhouses, bulk purchasing, and traditional food gathering. Prior to the pandemic, many Indigenous communities have expressed that the access to nutritious food is a concern. Groups we met with have come up with solutions using community gardens that would be worker run and the food would be distributed throughout the community. We worked with one group that was interested in bulk purchasing with the community to develop for the members because the local store did not supply the freshest good, and the food that they did supply was quite overpriced and expensive. So the group was looking at pooling the resources to purchase a delivery van and make bulk grocery runs to the nearest city that was 3 hours away. So they were looking at doing the bulk purchasing that way. As for traditional food gathering, Cooperative First is proud that our very first project that we worked on and had incorporated was the Food Forest and Learning Center. Through this cooperative, 3 generations of women from 2 Indigenous families came together to create a space for learning, healing, and reconciliation on the Saskatchewan prairie. So the Food Forest sits on a 50-acre parcel of land with the abundance of natural foods, herbs, and prairies. It was established to conserve and protect the space that the members could use. The Learning Center was established inside an old church adjacent to the land that holds homeschool classes, gardening workshops, events, as well as a living area that can temporarily house families in distress. So this cooperative is the outcome of people connected to the strong visions of how the spaces may work together. It was brought to us by the Maggie Bluewaters. It was her vision to have this structure that was very that worked well with many people and where voices could be heard and everybody would have a say on how the co-op could be run. So Maggie, her daughter and granddaughter, as well as 3 generations from a Montreal Lake First Nation family are the founding members. So they create what they consider as a powerful pack of women to conserve this land and continue to produce and keep the land pristine for generations to come. So when it's considering and starting a co-op, it's really important to discuss membership, and some of the discussion questions are: who should be part of the co-op, who will receive the benefit, who should do all the work, and how will decisions be made. So these are just many conversations that need to be kind of fleshed out with community members and the ones who are actually starting the co-op. So for some of these questions, we would and considerations, we'd recommend the following steps. So identifying the opportunity, what project or where do you think the co-op may fit? Identifying the members and the roles that are created. Engage membership and to ensure that they actually want to be part of the co-op. And ensure members understand their roles and responsibilities. And contact cooperatives first. Sections 3 and 4 are things that cooperatives first can help, but we have heard stories from cooperatives that are no longer in existence is members didn't realize that they are owners and they do have a responsibility to continuing the operation of the co-op, and or they were set up in a wrong structure. Worker co-ops that the workers didn't realize that they were the owners and were always looking outside of the owners, and so they didn't feel empowered to make those key decisions. So what does Cooperatives First do? We're here to sit with people and to start the conversation, see where the opportunity is and how it may or may not work as a co-op. We'll always be honest, and if the structure or it doesn't seem like it's the right fit, we will talk you through it or talk to you how it can work. We are not experts in every industry. We are experts in cooperative legislation and requirements by both the provincial and federal legislation. So we will guide groups through the legislation to ensure that it meets those requirements and help you get through all of the paperwork. We also provide support, so awareness of the model, education, how the co-op can be structured, governance, incorporation, and we also provide business support. So as a nonprofit and
I just thought I'd get out of the way. You're doing the carpet.
Okay, so as a nonprofit and donor funder, many of our services are offered at no cost to the community or groups that want to use our services. And we do have one product that we do charge for, but we do that and we operate that on a cost recovery basis. So that is the incorporation product that we just are passing off the fees that are charged by the provincial government to incorporate. So that is the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for attending. If you have any further comments, questions, or want to discuss any future projects, please feel free to reach out to me, and we could set up a one-on-one virtual meeting. My contact number is just email is trista@cooperativesfirst.com. My work number is 382 4410 but I am working remotely, so I would recommend you calling my cell, which is the 270. And I would also like to encourage everyone to visit the yourwaytogether.ca site for more information, or to sign up for our next workshop, which is held on May 13th at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Once again, thank you, and I will open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Trista. Can Do is proud of its relationship and partnership with Cooperatives First. They've supported many of our events and initiatives, and you know, it's an opportunity to introduce CDOs and business leaders in the communities for just to consider another way of doing business, another way to structure your businesses and so on. And you know, we're not saying it's for everyone, and Trista isn't saying it's for everyone, but it should be considered. There's opportunities that the cooperative model can provide that's unique to that model. And I know that there's a number of Indigenous organizations that have utilized it to great success. So thank you, Trista. We've got a few minutes to answer any additional questions you might have. We have a closing ceremony that starts at 5:15, so we don't want to miss that. But there's still a bit of time to answer any questions while you have the chance. So as a reminder, these sessions are recorded and will be available, so you can refer to it. Also, Trista's presentation will also be available through the Whova app and through linkstolearning.ca.
Hi, Trista, it's Valerie O'Connell calling. I just wanted to ask if the model had ever been used for anything other than agricultural, because I know, like, because of the pandemic, food security and food sovereignty became like the #1 catchphrase in our communities. But I'm wondering if it's been utilized for something other than agriculture. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It has been used in quite a few different industries, not just agriculture. I have been working with a few different groups, and we did recently incorporate 2 artisan co-ops. One was just for being able to reach new markets online, and that way the artists could share the share in the cost and administration of running a website and working collectively to go to sell their products. Another one that the other arts co-op that we worked with actually structured as a multi-stakeholder. So then that way both resale and organizations that would have a store space and could procure and sell authentic products are members. So they're a one membership class, as well as the artists as another membership. So the suppliers and the purchasers. And their hopes is to provide all the tourist destination places in Alberta with authentic products. Some of the interesting ways that we've seen co-ops used is for in Alberta, there's the Rural Electrification Association, so the REA's power is supplied through co-ops. We did work with daycare co-ops, housing co-ops. We've done a number of projects. Midwives working together and being able to be to serve the Edmonton area. So yeah, it could fit in any industry, and it's just an easier way to have the more ownership and people working together and everybody seeing a benefit, not just the one person who puts in the most capital having the most say, and it's a collective decision-making process.
Great, thank you for your question. Roy, did you have a question?
Yes, hello. That's a great presentation there. I'm from Lytton First Nation, and we are actually starting a food hub. We're trying to incorporate traditional foods as well, and reactivating our ditches and getting our gardens going again. It's kind of a challenge with intergenerational, little bit of a gap there where younger people don't want to pick up the rake and take over the farms. I thought it was really interesting. You mentioned about slaughterhouses and being able to wrap and package like wild game. That seems phenomenal to me. Might be a little too specific of a question for you, but I mean, what about packaging and labeling? And do you have to track your supply chain, like where the thing was harvested?
I'm not quite sure on how the operation is. So that was like, yeah, one of the questions that I left the people who are more understanding the food industry a little bit better than I am. So I would help with.
So what was the name of that co-op? Then maybe I'll reach out to them.
That one, it's still kind of in talks, so they haven't actually formalized yet. So that's why I didn't name them.
Okay, another question.
It's a secret, Roy.
There's still an opportunity to be the first, hey?
Yeah,
that's right. You can still beat them to it.
Yeah.
The other question was regarding, I think it was Maggie Bluewater. You said they established a co-op. I'm not too sure if you said like right on the land where they harvest the herbs and berries, I believe you said. Is that on reserve or off reserve?
That is actually off reserve. So they purchased that land to preserve it, like, because they went to visit it, the land came up for sale, and they just found that that was a traditional, at one time it was a traditional area for picking and harvesting, but it was not on nation. So instead of it, kind of the story behind that was it was used as being slowly turned into like a party place, and so they wanted to preserve it and protect it. So so it was off nation, so that's why they purchased it.
Any idea how that process, like how long did it take? Was it full of red tape and bureaucracy, or was it fast and easy?
I could ask. I don't have the details. That was actually a project that was completed just before I started with Cooperatives first. But if I'd love to sit with you and kind of discuss any opportunities, and then I could get you any details that you might want.
Thank you. I have your email address. I'll send you an email.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Roy. Any other questions? We've got just a couple more minutes, and then we'll adjourn and see you all back at the closing ceremonies at 4:15. Okay, no one else? All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time to spend with us. Thank you, Trista, for your presentation and for your knowledge and sharing, and for your openness to continue dialogue after the fact. I think almost all of the presenters at BC Links to Learning are open to that possibility, because I think we all know that sometimes during the presentation, it just starts the wheels spinning, and then it doesn't land on a question until minutes, hours, days later when you kind of finally see the connection. So that doesn't mean that you've missed your opportunity. There's still time to connect or reconnect. And I certainly suggest to you that you continue that that dialogue after the fact. So thank you again. Thank you, Cooperatives First, for your partnership and continued support of Can Do. And we hope to see you soon at some other event, virtual or real. Cross fingers. And we'll see you soon. Take care.